Hi there, my name is Jenny and I'm here to show you how to make one of these living hinge books. The SVG file on my Etsy shop comes with covers that either have 4 rounded corners or just 2 rounded corners. It's up to you which one you use. There's also several widths for cutting the leather that goes around the spine. You'll choose the correct width based on the number of pages. I've also included in the file a piece that you can cut for contrasting wood if you'd rather have that than the leather. You can also just cut a piece of decorative paper to put on your spine. You need to be sure that you use 1/8 inch thick plywood. That's the best wood to use for these living hinges. You also need to make sure that the grain runs this way along the same parallel to your cuts. I have SVG files in 3 different sizes, 8.5 by 11, which would be good if you wanted to use paper that's already 8.5 by 11, like this dot grid paper. I have a file that is about 8 by 6, and then also a 9 by 9. Your kit for making the books will include hand-torn paper in the number that you choose with the holes punched. This here is 25 pieces of Strathmore drawing paper. This has always been my favorite paper because it's not white, it has a very light texture, and it takes different kinds of media well without bleeding through, yet it still turns pretty well. It's not thick as cardstock. Also included will be 3 screw posts of your choice. I'll offer silver, antique brass, and black, and then the 3 screws. These also come in different lengths depending on how many pages are in your book. And then I've also made this little tool to help measure how wide you need to cut your leather. The kit will come with a piece of leather that's wide enough to cut up to 3 inches, and then you can choose which size you need based on how many pages you have and anything else you might want to add. For instance, one of my books that I have here, this book, I have some decorative paper on the inside. You can get the kit and have the main body of the paper be this hand-torn paper from me, but you can also add anything you want. And the thickness of your book will determine how big you need to cut your spine. This faux leather that I'll provide in the kits is laserable. So for instance, on this book, I lasered the name on the spine as well as cutting it. Okay, here we are in the Glowforge user interface. You'll need to import the size that you want to use or the size that you have. I'll pick 8 by 6 with 4 round corners. Now you can either just select this explanatory text here and delete it, or up here in your settings just ignore it. I separated the lines here for the hinge from the outer part of the book because I think it cuts better if you do the hinge lines before the outside. So here I have my saved settings for 1/8 inch birch, which is 190 full power, 1 pass, auto height. I also have settings for the 1/8 inch walnut that you can get at Smoky Hill Designs. For that and the cherry, I've been using 180 full power, 1 pass, auto height. But for this one, it will be my birch settings on both of these. They're both cuts. I just separated them, like I said, because I want to make sure it does these before it does the outside. Now, select it all, line it up so you're not wasting your material there. These 8x6 are sized so that you can just barely fit 4 covers on one 12x20 sheet, but you probably can't cut them all at the same time because you have to scoot them way up to the top and way down to the bottom. They just barely fit. So you can cut 2 and then move your plywood and cut the other 2. What do we do next here? We've got our settings. Next, we're going to do our set focus, just anywhere up here. You can hear the Glowforge doing its magic. Doing autofocus. Also, on this example, I don't have my plywood masked, but I almost always mask the plywood. I don't want to have to sand it or take it off the burning marks in any other way, so I always mask the front and the back. Now with these books, the front is going to be a little bit darker, these lines, than the back. If you have your settings where it just barely cuts through, you can decide if you want the darker lines on the front or the darker lines on the inside. I've done it both ways. If you're going to add some sort of engraving here, then obviously if you do it all at the same time, your lines are going to be darker. So then you hit print, and for this size and 2 covers, it'll be a little over 9 minutes. So no big deal. Let's move on to putting the book together. After you've cut your covers, you will put your paper in between and then go ahead and use one of the screw posts here to put on this little measuring tool that I've made. Sometimes the pages can be a little fidgety because they're hand torn and hand punched, so they're not exactly perfect, which is okay. Makes it more handmade. Okay, so go ahead and just put your tool on one side with one of the screw posts and then turn it around your spine and notice which size you might need. If it falls somewhere in between, definitely go with the bigger size. If you have a little bit of play in your spine, that's okay, but you definitely don't want to make it too short. In this case, it falls right on the 2, right there. You don't want to cover up your living hinge, but you want to go right up to it. Okay, so now you'll go cut your spine out of the leather, 2 inches wide for this book, and the leather that I provide will have this adhesive backing on it. It's 3M positionable mounting adhesive. So all you'll have to do after you cut it, if the settings turn out right, and I'll provide the settings that I use on my Glowforge Pro, you'll be able just to peel it right off the backing there. So now this has the adhesive on it. First thing you want to do is line it up with probably the front side of your book. If you've lasered something on the cover, that's going to make a difference. Line it up with your holes there. Take, I've lost my bone folder. Take either a bone folder or a Sharpie will do just fine, and burnish it real good. That is what is going to permanently adhere this positionable mounting adhesive to your wood. It's positionable because until you burnish it, you can kind of pick it up and move it a little bit. It's not going to stick totally like some of the other 3M adhesives might until you burnish it. Okay, now you're going to want to add all 3 of your screw posts. And you might end up doing this a little bit different. Sometimes it's a little fidgety getting everything in there right, so you'll come up with the best way for you. This book has been put together before, so it made it a little bit easier to put all that in there. So then you're going to turn this over and line it up on this side. Line up your holes. And then use your bone folder or your Sharpie again to burnish it down. Now this adhesive isn't holding the book together really, it's the screws, but the first prototype I made with the leather on it, it kind of gapped in between the screws, and I didn't like the way that looked, so that's when I added the adhesive, just to give it a cleaner look. Then all you have to do is put the screws in, and I recommend using a screwdriver, or if you can't find a screwdriver, occasionally I can't find my screwdriver, I'll use a ruler or something like that. You can use your hands too, but sometimes these screws don't have the thread on them just right. Mine just fell out the back. And it makes it a little less frustrating to get in there and get started if you use a screwdriver. So that one started. It can be a little faster with your hand. Get it nice and tight. Now, after you've put these books together, you can take them apart and refill the pages. You probably just don't want to take off the spine, so the 2 pages will be attached to each other now that you've put on the spine with the adhesive. But you can still take out the screws and replace the paper. One of the reasons I decided to provide the file with the kit is so if you have your own laser and you want to make the covers, you can use any plywood you'd like to use. This one's unfinished walnut. You can finish it however you want, and you can cut it out and do whatever engraving you want all at the same time. So there it is. There's the walnut book with the living hinge cover. And now I can take it back apart if I want to and add some decorative paper, but that's it. Thank you.